Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So in today's point of view, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us a little bit about releasing limiting beliefs. Now, this is something that we are all very familiar with. We know this is kind of the heart and soul of the spiritual process, is releasing all of those limitations that we've picked up over the course of our lifetime. But one thing that doesn't happen very often is we haven't gotten a lot of instruction from our teachers as to how you actually do that. And this is something the P's have been talking to me about a lot lately. So I wanted to share some of their advice with you in case this is something you've been struggling with. Because releasing limiting beliefs can be kind of tricky to do. We're just not exactly sure how to go about it. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the advice that the Pleiadians have been giving me to help you move through some of those stickier belief systems you may be holding on to. But before we jump in to talking about how to release limiting beliefs, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. Now, if you have been on your spiritual path for a while, and if you're watching this video, you probably have, I'm sure you have heard your spiritual teachers talking about how important it is to release your limiting beliefs. This is one of those things we have heard our teachers going on about for years, but so few of them actually teach us how to do that. And this was always one of my big questions when my teachers would talk about the importance of releasing our limiting beliefs. My first question was, well, how do you do that? Because if you've ever tried to do it on your own, it's a little tricky. So the P's are going to share some advice for helping us do this, because if you have listened to any of my videos, you know I am all about the how. How do we do it? We all know the theory by now. We all know what we should be doing, what the goal is, but do you actually know how to do it? That's what the P's are all about, helping us with the practical side of the equation. So when we talk about releasing our limiting beliefs, how do we actually do that? Well, the first thing is to actually recognize when we are bumping up against one of those beliefs. And a great way to identify in your life when you're just running into one of your many limiting beliefs is by how it feels. So one of the things that is a great indicator that you are face to face with one of your limiting beliefs is that sense of discomfort, that sense of resistance, that sense of fear or anxiety, just that feeling that you're pushing against something, that you're seeing something you don't like. So your negative emotions are like neon signs showing you where you have a limiting belief. And the way they operate is to alert you through a feeling of discomfort, something that doesn't feel good. So that is your first sign that whatever you're giving your attention to is connected with one of your limiting belief systems. Because we can't actually have an emotional response to something unless there's a limiting belief behind it. Now, it can also, of course, be a positive belief, but because we want as many of those as we can get, we're not going to focus on those in today's video. We're going to focus on when your emotions are signaling to you that you have a belief that doesn't serve you. So whenever you get that reaction from your body, that flare or flash of emotion that is negative or uncomfortable, it's just a sign from your higher self that you have a belief that's out of alignment with your higher self's knowledge, with what you know to be true at the higher levels of your consciousness. So in order to have an emotional reaction, we have to have a belief system behind it. Now, a great way to think of this is to remember a time when you were in a foreign country. So if you have ever been abroad, visiting a country that you're not familiar with, if you've ever clicked on the local news and you may be watching something that is going on in the city you are in that has everyone up in arms. You are seeing protests or riots or just very strong reactions from the local population, but you can watch it with absolute neutrality because you don't actually know what's going on. And so because you don't have any judgments around that topic, because you don't really know what's happening. You don't have an emotional reaction when you're watching that news story. Now, this might be something that if it was happening in your hometown, it would light your hair on fire. But because of the fact that you're watching something in an unfamiliar area, you don't really know the story or the players or who's right or wrong. So you can watch this news story, even if it's showing very strong reactions of the local population, and you can stay in neutrality because you don't have any belief systems that are being activated as you watch that. So your emotions are always going to be that sign that indicate to you a limiting belief. Because when you don't have a limiting belief attached to something, you don't have a negative emotional reaction to it. So when we are trying to release a limiting belief or belief system, it's a great idea to start by looking for those areas where you are having very strong emotional reactions. And then what the P's are encouraging us to do when we identify one of these topics in our life, and let's face it, we all have them. What the P's always encourage us to do then is to get curious, to start questioning that belief system. Because if you start to question your belief systems, you start to unravel what they're actually based on. And most of the time, you will realize they don't make sense. So whenever you are just going through your daily life and you bump into something that is a problem area for you, maybe it is a news story that gets you agitated and angry every time you hear it. Maybe it is someone who is just always a source of aggravation for you. Whatever it is that causes that negative emotional reaction, if you can get yourself to stop for a moment before the mental ponies run away with you and start telling stories, which of course is what the mind loves to do, then the first thing that the P's are encouraging us to do is start to ask questions. Because the way our belief systems are constructed, we tend to believe them. We tend to take them as fact, but they're actually, in most cases, just opinions and someone else's opinions. So if you identify an area that's given you a little heartburn in your life and you start to ask yourself, why can't I have what I want? Why is this happening? Why am I responding to this in a negative way? You'll start to uncover what the belief is behind that thing, that trigger for you that's causing the negative emotion. And we usually will find that it is some variation of a belief that we're not worthy, that we're not enough, we're not good enough, that we can't do something, that something's impossible. It's one of our huge collective beliefs is in the impossibility template, that there are things that we just can't do as humans, or that we don't know how to do something. We don't have the resources to do something. These are some of those big collective themes that tend to be behind a lot of our negative beliefs. But as you start to question this belief, what happens is you'll start to see where it is flawed. So say, for example, you are doing something in your life and getting a negative reaction to it, or maybe a negative manifestation, and it's making you feel bad. So you start to ask yourself, well, why do I believe this? Why can't I have what I want in this situation? You may realize it comes back to the fact that you don't feel worthy. So question that. Why would you ever feel unworthy? Where does that come from? Well, for a lot of us, that's going to go back to our childhood. Something that someone said to us when we were young and we just took it to heart. Something a teacher may have said to you. Something your parents may have said to you to criticize you, to devalue you. And you took that to heart to mean that you were not worthy as a being. And because that was taken as truth by your human mind, you kind of ran with it. But when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. That was just someone else's opinion in the moment. And maybe they were completely wrong. Maybe they were projecting something on you that they felt about themselves. Or maybe they were just in a bad mood and running their mouth. So when you start to question your beliefs, you start to realize that they don't make a whole lot of sense. That you have been putting this entire belief system in place based on an offhanded comment that someone made to you when you were in kindergarten. If you trace your beliefs back by asking yourself questions, you'll eventually see how it doesn't make sense. And as soon as the brain sees that something doesn't make sense, it lets it go. It is only when we don't question our beliefs, when we assume that, oh, it's a belief, it must be true, that we create these huge patterns in our life. So the key to working through our limiting beliefs is to start to challenge them, to not let your mind dictate something without questioning it. Because a lot of times these things that we have been led to believe belong to someone else. We believe something because someone told us that's how the world works. And so because we were very young and we didn't know any better, we took that to heart. We believed it. But now that we are ascending beings, we know that we are divine God consciousness, that we are absolutely unlimited. When you start to question your beliefs, you start to see they don't really hold up. And as soon as you can show your mind that it just doesn't make sense, it goes away. Because the mind isn't stupid. It may have taken some things on face value that it shouldn't have, but it's not going to hold on to something that just doesn't make sense. So a great way to approach your limiting beliefs is to start to challenge them, to start to just ask yourself, why am I holding on to this? Where does this come from? And this doesn't mean that you have to trace every belief back to its origin point. But when you just start to ask yourself, why am I buying into this? Is this what I want to create in my life? You start to realize that a lot of our limiting beliefs just don't hold water. They just don't make sense. And as soon as you realize that something just doesn't make sense, guess what? It tends to dissolve. Because we don't hold on to things that are gibberish. We just don't. So you can really help yourself in releasing your limiting beliefs if you just start to question them until they don't make sense. And once you get to that point, you'll find they tend to dissolve on their own. So this is a great little practice to try out if you are struggling with some things on a chronic basis. It just keeps showing up. So these areas of our life that keep kind of slapping us in the face, where we have this same thing happening over and over again, is a great place to start to just question what you're believing about these situations. And the more you question them, and every time you get an answer to a question, go a little deeper. Ask, what is behind that? Why would I buy into that? And keep that up until you realize how it doesn't make sense. And once you do, you are pretty much at the end of releasing that limiting belief, because you don't hold on to things that don't make sense. So that is something the P's are encouraging us to play around with to help us release some of these things that we just haven't quite let go of. And as always, if you want to learn in more detail exactly how to do this and all the other great tools that the P's talk about in these videos, click the link in the description to work with me one-on-one. I hope this has helped you, and I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.